And now we are recording this for posterity. Fantastic. Thank you for the recommendation. Decides to make puns and everything. I keep wanting to call it power outrage. That is fantastic. Yeah, we were going through a power outage, and then we came up with power outage. So power outage is a tabletop RPG designed to be played by kids and GM'd by adults. And originally, the idea was to get you know parents playing with their kids, playing at the same table, and that's morphed over time. It still has that as a root, but I realized as we were working on development and things like that, the potential for this to be to also function as an educational or counseling tool. So I switched away from the terminology of kids and their parents to kids and adults, because really I believe this can this can transcend the family boundaries and allow a lot of different interactions. Let's see here. Built in. Oh, I don't know if it has it built in. I don't see it as an option. I don't see storing this as an option, but if it is, then so be it. Oh, but I can send the broadcast to Facebook Live. So let me do that. Connecting to Facebook Live. Choose where you want to post the feed. And I guess I should do it on my timeline? Yeah, let's do it on my, or should I guess I should do it on the page's timeline. I should do it on the page. Share on a page you manage. There we go. And not accessible RPG, power outage. I am a consummate professional, ladies and gentlemen. Power outage. There we go. And next. I'm glad that Dots RPG is in chat to guide me through my buffoonery. So I appreciate that. Okay. Open Facebook Live preview. You're ready to preview. I don't want to preview. I just want it to go, to do the thing. All right, here we go. Connecting. I'm going to assume it's live. I'm going to close this out. I don't want to preview it. We're good, right? Okay. So let's get to some questions. It canceled the Facebook pop-up. Please confirm the stream on Facebook to proceed. I got to do this. Okay. Well, maybe we just won't Facebook Live it. How about that? All right, I'll do it one more. I'm going to try it one more time, and I'm sorry for holding everybody up here. Let's see here. Power outage. Next. Going live on Facebook too, because everything is cross-platform these days. All right, here we go. Open live Facebook preview, and then I guess I should confirm it. Confirm. Where's the confirm? There we go. And we're going live. The title is the Power Outage AMA. And tabletop RPGs. I'll just say RPG. Oh, it requires a video game? That's silly. Well, we're not going to, let's put a tag in there of tabletop RPG. Okay. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff involved with that. So you know what? Nuts to that. We're just sticking here. We're staying right where we are. All right. So let's get to these questions. Larry Hamilton asks, what was your impetus, inspiration to make this game? Well, again, I'll get into a little bit about the history. So I started creating it for my kids. And I'll actually roll in the third question that he asked there of why a new RPG instead of an existing one. Good question. A bunch of reasons. At the time, I was pretty new to tabletop RPGs. I had played Dungeons and Dragons 4.4e, and I didn't necessarily know as much as I do now about what was out there. What I did know is that I wanted to play a tabletop RPG with my kids. I wanted to allow my 4-year old at the time to be able to play who hadn't yet achieved the ability to read, while at the same time play with my 6-year old who was already starting to read and able to do a lot of computational stuff like that. So I wanted to play a game that allowed me to play with both of them. And even as I think I was starting to look through some of the things, I was just skimming through some of the earliest play levels, the earliest times a kid can play, and they were always shooting much higher than 4 years old. And I wanted to play with my 4-year old because she was there and she was excited, and I think they had only no not too long ago watched a couple Disney movies that they enjoyed and they wanted to be heroes and stuff like that. So I was like, all right, sure, let's go for something hero related. Uh, but the other thing was, as we started playing, so it wasn't just that there wasn't a game that I was finding that was tailored to be able to play with by kids. It was that there weren't really too many RPGs that I saw out there at the time, that were specifically tailored for kids and specifically tailored for the environment in which kids were playing in. And I kind of, through trial by fire and trial by my wife, uh, you know, getting a little bit peeved at the fact that during my first playthrough, I had my kids practically beating a robot senselessly and until just constantly clanking away at a robot until it was down. That I realized that the standard gameplay itself, um, you know, hero runs into a bad guy, hero beats up bad guy is defeated, doesn't necessarily work for every group. Uh, there are there are differences in the groups, and there's differences in the paths that you would want to take, and that became the kernel for the first, uh, and that leads to this question here. That became the kernel for the first mechanic that I actually built, aside from the attributes and everything like that. Now, at the time, I called it SEPA, and I'll say for about 2 years, I had this acronym for combat, exploration, puzzles, and alternative. And I literally looked at this thing for like 2 years before I realized that it spells out cape if I just rearranged the letters. So, the words. And not only that, but the words rearranged as cape actually makes way more sense to the concept of the cape system. So there's that. So I'm not the brightest person out there, mind you, as I'm creating this thing, but it's a work in progress. It's a work that has kind of almost taken an evolutionary process from its inception to its beginning, where it gets these minor changes as I learn and experience things, playing with my kids, playing with other people's, playing the game with other people's kids, playing with adults even too, because they have great ideas because they've been playing the games. Let's see. The cape system is a big part of Power Outage. And what the cape system basically is, it's combat, alternative, puzzle, and exploration. And it on there's two different areas where it affects. There is the pre-built adventure side, and then there is the build your own adventure side of things. So basically adventures are broken up into these four components: combat, alternative, puzzle, and exploration. Wherever there is a combat component, there is an alternative component that provides an alternative to an alternative resolution to a situation that doesn't involve combat. So if you were attacked by monsters in a diner, by like breakfast monsters, in the combat component, you might be fighting the monsters. In the alternative component, you might be finding things about the diner to either slow down the monsters or make sure that people are escaping successfully, things like that. So you're resolving the component in either one way or another, or you can mix the two at the same time. The puzzle components are just basically puzzles that you can provide for the kids that are playing. The great thing about the puzzles are this becomes a component that you could drop into a game that often works for educators and counselors as assignments that can be brought into a game. So from the written adventure standpoint, they are just standard puzzles that I'm creating that kids would solve. And they're usually not required to complete a session, but they are there to help accent a session. And then finally, you have exploration. And exploration includes things like the role-playing aspects of things, communication with people, and then a lot of discovery. Things like looking around a room, trying to find out what's going on where, trying to communicate with people to find clues on how you're supposed to move forward. So in the pre-built adventures, the CAPE system functions as a choose-your-own-adventure guide. And you know what? Now should be the time where I am pulling up Power Outage itself, covering my face. I shouldn't have done that. There we go. So here we got Power Outage. And let's run through the CAPE system. So there you go. Here's a great example. Within the there's at the beginning of the book, by the way, there is a quick start guide. So it's a great way to just jump right into playing Power Outage. Also, if you're demoing or playing the game in like a store setting, like a comic book shop setting, it's a great way to start kids up into the game. So in the pre-written adventures, the CAPE path system basically becomes a choose your own adventure. So the DM can look at these components and be like, okay, well, I am dealing with a group of kids that may not be comfortable with combat, so I'm going to be going from alternative, but they are pretty high skilled, so I want to include a puzzle component. So I'm going to be moving from the alternative to puzzle, and then moving on from the puzzle to exploration. There's also an option, of course, like so it's a choose your own path. Basically, it allows you to create a session that is unique to the group that you are playing with. Separate from that, when you're talking about the building your own adventure side of things, it creates guidance and structure for a GM, especially new GMs, for creating these adventures. They can build components rather than worrying about this overarching storyline and how they're going to mesh things and how they're going to make sure that the kids are going to tackle them. So you break up larger problems into smaller components, which is the CAPE system. So going back to some of the questions here, how did I come up with my game mechanics? Well, the game mechanics were designed for kids, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have the ability to do. Like, I didn't want to just create a simplified version of any other tabletop RPG. Um, it is simplified in the extent that the components and the attributes that each character maintains requires a lot less bookkeeping. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be less fun or less challenging or anything along that nature. So basically, let me get into some of the mechanics. Every hero has, and by all means, ask any questions that you guys want. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep on rambling on. Every hero has 4 attributes. First one is impact. Impact is your humanistic characters. It's your characteristics. It's your human characteristics. It is your ability to punch, kick. It is your ability to lift things or move things. It is basically all the things that a person can do that doesn't have like heroic attributes or training or whatever the case may be. So it affects things like your ability to punch or kick or what have you, your standard attack basically. It affects your ability to do something physical, and it also affects your. It is also works as your social impact. So your presence when communicating with people. So that impacts your ability to communicate. It's your it's your charisma to an extent. But that's all bundled into one attribute: impact. Power is your ability to use your power. And there's a table, and I'll explain all that in a little bit. So your power attribute is your ability to use your power. It is your more superheroic capabilities, which primarily relates to your senses, your ability to see in the dark, your ability to see small, objects or notice very discrete things that only a hero might be able to sense. It's your spider sense, basically, your ability to determine that danger is present or coming. And it also is your heroic knowledge set. So it basically becomes based off of your hero's past or what have you, their ability to know things because they have lived the life as a hero uh, is is displayed in their power attribute. So your ability to what it boils down to basically is, I've probably said what it boils down to like about 15,000 times already, and I apologize for that. I realize that as I'm saying it. But what it is it becomes an opportunity as a GM to provide guidance to kids as they're moving forward. So I'll ask them to roll a power to, if I want them to notice something that they might not realize at first to ask about. It's kind of just GM guidance. Now, those are two kind of, for the lack of a better term, I'd say attacking skills. Your impact is your human side, your power is your hero side, or your superheroic side. Because, you can be heroic with your impact, in all honesty. But both of those are an attacking power to an extent, an attacking attribute. And your defending attribute is your Omer, based off of a pun on Ohm, the ability to resist energy. So it's the ability, Omer is your ability to resist a power. And it's also a play on the word armor. So it basically stands like that. Your Omer is your armor. So in a combat situation, typically, it's a rolling dice mechanic. It's a dueling dice mechanic. So if I am attacking with impact or power, I'm rolling a d20, I'm adding my impact or my power score, and I'm seeing if it matches or exceeds a villain or villain's d20 roll plus their Omer. So each time you're rolling dice, so both the villain and the hero is rolling dice, and that's something that again came about from gameplay. When you start noticing that kids are drifting off when it's not their turn specifically, I wanted to build in a mechanic that got kids more involved even when it wasn't on their turn. So that meant getting them rolling dice to defend themselves rather than just taking an attack. You know, the other side of it too is that what I heard from one person is as soon as they learn that all they have to do is roll a specific number in order to beat something, the villain or the event just becomes that number. And I wanted to avoid that. I wanted people to still connect what they're doing to the the person or the action that they're affecting. That being said, yeah, it works just like that. So if I am trying to punch a villain or a villain is trying to punch a hero, it is a impact score plus my d20 versus the villain's Omer plus a d20 roll. And it gets crazy because you get these sometimes wild scores, but they're weighted, so you do have a greater likelihood of succeeding if you invest points in a specific attribute. So let me know if you guys have any questions. I'll definitely be able to, I'll definitely run through those or change directions. Let's talk about powers and creating a hero. So how do you create a hero? Well, there is guidance in the book, and I'll jump down to that. There we go. What makes a hero? Guidance. So when you're working with kids to create a hero, you don't necessarily have to start with like the mechanics of the game, especially if you're dealing with younger kids. Sorry, Zip. What you can do is as you start out, you ask them to start creating a hero themselves. It doesn't have to have mechanics attached to it at all. And if they're, having concerns about like what to create, you can provide guidance. Like, what are your favorite colors, or what do you want your hero's colors to be? And then they may pick some colors. What you do is you refine the choices that they have to allow them to create a better mental image of the hero they want to create. And then you ask them, well, what are your, you say, what are your, what colors do they like? How old is your hero? Like how does your hero look like? And then that helps that helps remove that hesitation on choice, and you start getting into more detail. Specifically, what are your hero's powers? Now, they don't need to know specifically what the statistics are within the book. They just want to know that their hero has the ability to form ice, or their hero can levitate things, or their hero can, make things stick to a wall, or they could speak to animals, or things like along those natures. They just want to know what their hero can do. So what you do is you start off by asking them for maybe 4 or 5 things that their hero can do. And sometimes it is like a thematic thing where they're saying, my hero can freeze things, my hero can, form ice, my hero can slide on ice, my hero can, change the weather, my hero can put out any fire, things along that nature. And sometimes it's completely different. There is no rhyme or reason to the things that they could do. But that's what you do. You gather some information from them about what they can do. Once you have that information, you could start trying to apply the powers that they've come up with to a table. So I've created these tables and I've broken them up into combat, combat, and then we're going to utility in green, then supportive powers in blue. So now you go to these tables. Now these tables are very generically labeled, so they seem somewhat boring, but the idea here is to not distract the person from by giving them names, but by allowing them to have a blank canvas to work on. So if I am freezing a villain, using just ice as an example, or you know what, I'll go a different route. I'll say telepathy. My hero has brain powers, right? If I am using telepathy to freeze a villain, then I might choose to either stop their attack for 1 round or stop their movement for 1 round. So there's a bunch of different options in these power tables. And the thing about the power tables are they exist, but if you go to poweroutage.com, if you have a different power that you want to submit as a power, you can, and then it can become a canon power, basically. So it doesn't matter whether I'm using mental telepathy to stop an enemy, or I'm freezing them to stop an enemy, or I'm creating a wall of fire which prevents them from moving, or I am shooting a sticky glue at them which stops their movement. Whatever the case may be, the kids provide the cause, and Power Outage provides the effect. That way, you have complete creative control on creation while still creating a playable character within the world of Power Outage. So yeah, exactly like that. Masks. I haven't played Masks. I've heard great things, and I've seen it being played at DexCon recently, but I haven't gotten down to sit down myself and play it. But it looks like a blast. There are, of course, now the other thing I want you to be aware of with Power Outage is that so it's played by kids, so it can't be a dogmatic codex of rules that must be followed. It has to be a form of guidance, because if you try to box kids into a rule set, they will find a way to break that box. So it is guidance, and by all means, within your game, the rule of cool applies. If your kids want to do something that is out there, then support them on it by all means. So while there is guidance in the power tables, they are just that. They are guidance to options and powers that you can use to create. Now, if you decide that there is something else that you want to do that isn't represented in the power tables, do it. There are options in the game for creating powers. There's options in the game for combining powers and ways that you can use that within the mechanics of the game. But by the end of it, if you are, depending on what you're playing, you're going to want to create maybe 5 or so powers that are tied to a character that they're creating. Now, if you're playing in a one-shot, you're playing a single game that's going to be running for a long adventure, your typical 4-hour session, which again with kids I don't recommend a 4-hour session, but let's say that you're doing a demo and you want kids to play this game over a span of a week or something like that. It's not going to be a long-standing campaign or anything like that. They're just playing to have fun. then you can give them access to all 5 powers. If you're doing a campaign setting where where these kids are going to be developing over time and gaining like these powers so that they get a sense of growth with their characters and so that they have an ease in moving into the characters that they're creating and building onto those characteristics, you're going to want to start off with creating 5, but at first level allowing them to use 2 of those powers. At level 3, they will gain the ability to use 4 powers. By level 5, they can use all 6 powers. Now, powers are limited, I believe, to 6 total powers that they can use at any given time, at which point you are swapping out powers as you level up. And again, there is a reason behind this. There's a reason behind limiting the number of powers, and there's a reason behind limiting the attributes. And part of that, of course, is because you're dealing with kids. So again, you want less bookkeeping, right? You want to have them to be able to choose the thing that they want to do that they feel is cool without having to resort back to looking things up in a book all the time. But also, from a management side point, it's important because there is a big thing about in gaming with kids that I mean, it's big in education. It's called differentiation. Your ability to take a classroom and break it up into smaller groups and then allow kids to work at their individualized levels and provide them support at their levels while not, holding back the kids that are advancing or without ignoring the kids that need additional assistance. And I think Power Outage is in its consideration of differentiation is unique in that it allows kids to play the same game, but play in their way, but while still affecting, still having a contribution towards that same storyline. So if you have one kid that doesn't have the ability to read, then they may be picking powers based off of a description of what that power is, and they might be selecting from cards that you create for them. So I create cards, like for my daughters when we first started playing. I created 5 cards for them, and each card had a different symbol on it. My 4-year-old at the time was picking the powers based off of the symbol because she was able to connect the description of what the power does to the symbol on the card. She didn't need to care about the mechanics of what that power did necessarily. She didn't need to care about the 2d4 or the 1d3 versus enemies up to 10 feet away. She just needed to know that she wanted to blast these guys with an ice ball power. Whereas my older daughter, who was 6, was able to read, was able to conceptualize and strategize, and she wanted to know exactly what she was doing with her butterfly powers, right? So she was building walls of butterflies. She was, so she was reading through things and picking them. So they were both technically playing 2 different games, but at the same time they were both playing together. We were all playing together. And we were all contributing to the same effects, the same storyline. So it's important. But because as a GM you're managing these different levels, the bookkeeping has to be kept down to a minimum so that as a GM, I could provide more guidance to one and less guidance to another. Oh, I'm sorry, Ben. I started up at 9:30. I've been running through things like this. So I'll see about if I have a lull in conversation or lull in my discussion. But by all means, if you enjoy joining chat, you're welcome. Ben is, or Zach is, I believe that's Zach, right? is one of my players for the Sunday night game. So every Sunday on Twitch, I have a game that runs with a fantastic group. Oh, there he is. Fantastic. Uh, so, it's a group of 3 adults that play, and they are absolutely wonderful. I can't state how much I enjoy every single Sunday. I look forward to playing the game with them. And that's the cool thing about Power Outage. I've found that as often as adults are playing with kids, adults are playing the game in groups of other adults. So that's pretty cool. Oh, we got questions. What's the length of individual game sessions? I'm sure it varies by age and mental emotions. So let me share that with the group. Fantastic question again from Larry. So to jump away from this for a little bit, just to answer that question because it's a good question. The way that I built it is that you play each session is a cape path. A cape path consists of maybe 1 to 3 components, maybe give or take a little bit more, a little bit less. And because it's so compartmentalized in components, you can play a session from 15 minutes to an hour and be able to cut it off without really losing much of the story effect, because things are compartmentalized into smaller chunks that you can stack these chunks back to back to play the game based off of what you're comfortable with within the group. So if I have a group of kids that can only play for 15 minutes at a time, then I could play a 15-minute session because I can play 2 components with them. Without getting too far into it. And I compartmentalized it on purpose because, one, kids can't handle sitting down for a 4-hour session often. I mean, some kids can, and I've had some kids that did. But 2, I want to remove the barriers that a parent might have in playing the game with their kids. I wanted them to not feel like they're going to be required to sit down for the next 4 hours and play a game, even though that sounds like a dream to me. I understand that parents have different levels of entry into tabletop RPGs, so I wanted them to be able to pick up the game, play the game for 15 minutes, and put it away for a little bit without creating too much turmoil. But what I have discovered is that on the whole, people play the game for from anywhere to half an hour to an hour. That's what I've typically heard back from people. With adults playing the game for a considerably longer amount of time. Our sessions every Sunday run about 45 minutes to an hour. And it took us, Zach, what do you say, maybe like 7 episodes, 8 episodes or so to get through a single entire adventure. Now there is one mechanic, 7 episodes of play. Yeah, there you go. There is one mechanic that I want to point out. It's the first session, first level rule, which not a rule, but guidance, but still it's a rule. Basically, the first session that a kid plays, that sits down and plays, that's their first level. After that, they gain the amount of prerequisite experience for gaining that level, regardless of what they achieved. And in the second session, they start off at level 2. And the idea behind that is I want kids at the very start to get an idea of what it's like to level, that their efforts have an impact, that there is the potential for growth. So, yeah, first session, first session, first level. Let's see here. I think that's true. Yeah, it's to hook you in. Really, that's what it boils down to. Hook. There you go again. It boils down to it's to hook you. Really, that's what it is. Okay, so creating a hero. You take, um, you create your powers. You attach them to um, you take your kids' power causes. You apply them to power effects, and the actual character creation takes all of like maybe 5 minutes. So you start off with. Don't you guys love scrolling? There's a lot of scrolling here. There we go. There we go. Calculating your base stats. You start off with 2 impact, 2 power, 2 Omer, and yield points. Oh, I didn't talk about the 4th power, yield points, but I'll get there. Which is 10d6. Sorry, 10 plus 1d6. 10d6 would just be crazy. So at level 1, you add 3 points to impact, power, or Omer in any way, shape, or form. So you could add 5 to impact, or so you could add 3 to impact and be 5, 2, and 2. You could add 1, 1, and 1 and bring everything up to 3. You could add 2 to one and then 1 to another, however you want to slice it. The attributes will probably kind of roll into the character that they're creating, so they are pretty. I mean, even my younger daughter at the time was pretty confident in how she wanted. Like when I described what each attribute was, she kind of had an idea of the weight that she wanted them to have, even if she didn't have the exact number. And at the time, when I first created this, I was like throwing attribute points at them left and right. You have 10 attribute points, but after the game has been refined, it's 3 points level 1, add it to where you want. You pick your powers. You have now if you're doing a campaign again, you start off with access to 2 of those powers. Eventually, you get to 6 powers. At that point, you're either replacing powers with stronger versions of powers, or you're replacing them in total. And then you roll your d6 and you add it to 10 to get your yield points. Now, what are yield points? Yield points are very similar to what you're familiar with hit points or health points. All impact all the time. Well, that's just you, Zach. I've actually Melanie actually loves using her necking power, which is purely power based, even though it is a vicious impact attack. It does seem like an impact attack. But Melanie is one of our players. She's an 8 foot tall giraffe girl, and she just kind of like swings her neck around and hits people with it. It's pretty great. So yield points. Let's talk about yield points. So originally there were hit points, health points, but I realized pretty early on there is no death in Power Outage. Rather than death, kids lose yield points, which means they lose a certain amount of points, and once they arrive to 0, they step back from a fight, or they are rendered unable to fight, or they are at a point where they feel that they have to yield, or they have to step back before they can continue on again. And so healing is not healing, it is encouraging. You are encouraging friends to get back into the fight. So it's a difference primarily in terminology, but it is an important difference because I've gotten rid of the idea that things are permanent and that the choices that we've made are irreparable, that there's no means of moving forward. I think one of the best quotes that I have that exemplifies this was from a recent Sanderson novel, which basically said that the most important, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's the most important step is not the first step, it's the next step. And I think that's really important for kids to learn. So you're not losing health, you're yielding. And yielding is not a stop. Yielding is making way and having patience before moving forward. So the other thing that you do when you're creating a component is you're finding out your travel speed, which is basically a d4 plus 4, and that's your travel speed, and then that's kind of set. There are powers that increase your travel speed, and let me talk about a turn. So what occurs on a person's turn? On a person's turn, they are performing some form of action. They are using their travel ability, or they're doing anything that is not a travel or an action. So an action is anything that is substantial, that takes some time, that it could be an attack, it could be a use of a power, it could be pulling a lever, it could be solving a puzzle, it could be whatever the case may be. It is something that is a little bit less than doing your taxes, a little bit more than shouting to your friend or readying to run. Travel is your standard movement across an environment. Everything is simplified, so I'm not talking about distance in feet. I'm talking about spaces. When we're plotting things out, you're moving 5 spaces, 10 spaces, things along that nature. I'm not discussing the absolute distances, but because of that, travel within the map allows for complete freedom, in that I can travel through enemies, I could travel through friends, I can occupy the same space as enemies or occupy the same space as friends. You just need to be near or adjacent to actually have an effect that requires you to be near or adjacent. And that is because certain powers have the ability to restrain a person's movement. So I wanted to remove that travel component and use blocking people with your body, and remove that and put that onto the power side. I don't know how much Zach liked that when he first found out, but it's a thing. The one caveat to travel is that you can standing up or going down is like the full extent of a travel space, because it functions more like a standard action. So it is a very resolute action. You can't travel more if you stand up or if you're knocked down, and that also gives a little bit more weight to knocking somebody over. Um, so, couple other things about the mechanics, and I'm going through as much of the mechanics as I can. Impact. There is a functionality of impact called de-escalate, which allows you to use your impact score to de-escalate anything from even within a combat environment, by in a non-violent method. So I can de-escalate a combat so that it is not, so that I am not engaging in combat in order to stop it. And what that takes is 3 impact rolls, similar to a standard impact roll, but they are combined with communication, like verbal communication, or however the communication occurs, if you have a disability that prevents that. That implores or explains or educates a villain, or however you're doing it. It has to be somewhat related to an actual role play within the game. But it's 3 impact rolls that you define in advance that you're trying to de-escalate, and with 3 successful impact rolls, you succeed in bringing the villain's yield points to 0. That occurs on any villain. Any supervillain. Is it overpowered? Yes. But it is a unique characteristic that allows you to bypass combat, and it allows you to use to focus less on the combat aspect of things and consider story elements a little bit more. And Zach actually almost succeeded in recently in doing that against a major villain by agreeing with her, which wasn't cool, you know. Actually, no, it was really cool, but it threw me for a loop, so that was awesome. So de-escalate, power, impact. Let's see here. Let's talk about turn order. How does turn order work? Turn order, I'm saying that weird. Feels like I'm saying that weird. Turn order is basically whoever goes first, and then the next team goes second. So if I start a fight with somebody, then my side goes first. If they start a fight with me, then their side goes first. It is story specific. It is determined based off of what's happening in the game. It is determined based off of what the actions are that the players decide, or based off of what the GM decides. The GM will have a final say, but typically if the players are gung-ho and they want to go right at it, then the GM will probably allow them to go first. Otherwise, if they are not, if they're holding back, then it might be the GM decides they're going to go. Or the GM might say that they're not engaging in combat until a specific event occurs, at which point then combat would start. Combat and turns occur as teams. So villains go, heroes go, or vice versa. That opens up a large amount of interplay within a group, and it encourages teamwork because you not only have the ability to determine within your group how you want turn order to occur, but you can actually coordinate based off of what you want to do. So you can decide to just roll to determine who goes first, or you can decide what works best for your team. If you want your healer or your character that has the ability to heal, or whatever the case may be, or encourage, going last, then that works best for your strategizing. Then that's what works. But it also opens up the potential for joint attacks. So you could do a joint attack, so 2 players can be playing at the same time, rolling at the same time against the same foe. It opens up the options on how kids interplay with each other. So that is, I want to say, a bulk of the mechanics. See, sorry, someone walked in. You didn't potentially. Let's see here. There's quite a few things that you probably didn't like. I said at one point that you seemed put off by the fact that you couldn't physically block people. And at one point I suggested that you potentially didn't like that getting knocked prone or standing up was a full travel action. Yeah, there you go. It's the blocking thing. But, well, what are you going to do? My game. But if you're GMing, then by all means, if you want to allow blocking, then allow blocking. Who cares? It's guidance. It's what works best for your group. That's the important thing. That is a big part of prone thing. It was frustrating in the moment, but I don't think it's a bad role. Oh, thank you. Okay. So that is. Let me just talk about a couple of other actions. So a standard action in combat is typically an impact attack or a power attack, but it can also be a couple other types of standard attacks. And if I can find them, there they are. So you have three other typical actions. You can encourage, and encourage means that you roll a d20, and if you get higher than a 10, you can heal the person. You can, encourage a kid back into the fight, or encourage them to regain some yield points by rolling a d6 and then adding that. Any hero has the ability to encourage another hero or themselves. If they are encouraging their friend, they gain a +2 to that initial d20 roll. It's a bit harder to encourage yourself than it is to encourage your friend. And of course, I encourage you to always encourage your friends. So that is encouragement. It's a great way of allowing people to do non-combative things while in combat. Is it overpowered? Eh. I like I like I like kids being able to encourage each other. What can I say? It worked out well, and there have been times when kids have gone down to 0 and they needed encouragement, not only from their friends but also in outside of the game. So it works out cool when somebody decides to stop what they're doing and come over and encourage you to get back into the fight. And then there's energize. So there is a limiter on the amount of powers that you can use. You can use up to 6 powers before you have to energize. Now, energize means that you basically take a defensive stance, which means you take half damage. You could still move, but you can't attack. And you have to do that for 2 rounds. At the end of this, at the start of the next round, let's see, on the second round as a free, on the second round as a free action, not related to your movement or your standard action, you can roll a d4 and gain that many uses of power back. So that's a standard energize. It's a quick thing that you need to do. You may pop off an encouragement as you're doing that, or you may be solving a puzzle or pulling a lever, whatever the case may be. And then there's super energize. Super energize requires 2 rounds of non-combat with the action occurring on the 3rd round. I called it a minor. That's back when I still had minors, but I got rid of those as a free action. Still a free action. But the other thing is you can't move for those. So it requires a bit more concentration to super energize. And I haven't come up with a better name for that. So I probably will eventually, instead of just super energize, but it'll come with time. The other thing is any other thing that the GM decides is a standard action is a standard action. So it's whatever the GM decides at the time. Certain powers are designated as standard, which means they go in conjunction with your standard action. Some powers, particularly more often the utility powers, are based on movement. So they occur as a part of your movement and don't incur the cost of your standard action during your round. However, it could use up your power utilization. So you can use 2 powers, use up 2 powers on a single turn because you're moving and you're using a power and you're using a power for an attack. With the supportive powers, for the most part, it's a mixture really of standard or free actions. I don't think there's any. Yeah, there are no real secondary. There are no real movement type support powers. Now, as you're leveling up, there are prerequisites. So in order to get Combat A2, you need to have a prerequisite of Combat A. I think there are mechanics though that allow you to jump into a second level power without a prerequisite, but it requires 2 power slots. Um, but you can read through that as you go through it. It's not a big component. So I'm going to say that with all that said, that is the entirety of the mechanics of Power Outage. And I talked for way too long. I'm surprised that there's still 11 people in here. Kudos, congratulations, because that's incredible. If any of you have any questions or questions, let me know. Just pop in some questions. I'll be happy to answer them. I could talk a little bit about the theme, but before I do, and before people have to go, let me talk about the Kickstarter itself a little bit. So currently, I'm standing at 50. Yeah, sorry. There's my face. Currently, I'm standing at about 55% funded. And the goal is to get to 7,500. Now, primarily, the funding is going towards, I'd say a large majority of it is going toward, is that starting up? Oh yeah, that's the live thing going. That's me. A large part of it is going towards design, edit, and art. I'd say about 6,000 of that 7,500 is probably going towards design, editing, and art. And the remainder is probably going towards satisfying. Yeah, it is. Sorry, somebody said it's easy to talk about something you love, and it absolutely is. I could go on and on and on. And I warned you in the title of the live AMA, so just so you know. Yeah, so the remaining balance is going one towards getting an ISBN number, and the rest is going towards satisfying the physical shipment requirements of the achieving my goal. That's it. I'm just trying to get a book that is available through DriveThruRPG that is, I believe, will become what I believe is the quality that the book itself deserves. I think from a mechanical aspect, from a story aspect, from an intent, from a guidance aspect of things, I think it is really something special. It's something that I'm willing to dedicate my life towards. And I don't want that hampered by my ability to draw. For my ability to make this book stand out in a stack of other tabletop RPGs. I can, in all honesty, if this doesn't succeed, it's yield points. It's yield points. It's not hit points. I'm not giving up. I'm not going to zero and failing, or I'm not dead. The project isn't dead. I'm yielding, and I'm working towards. I'm gonna work. I'm gonna work towards getting back to get something out there. It may not eventually have the design quality that it will, or maybe I would only be able to afford a template from the designer rather than the full design work. It may mean that I'm spending more time investing in editing and borrowing the favor of other people to read through and proofread. It may mean that check by check, I'm slowly, each check I'm paying for another small piece of art from my artist. Whatever the case may be, it may take a much longer time to get something that is acceptable, but it'll get there. So okay, it was really great having you, Jess. I appreciate you being here. Thank you, Jess. dotsrpg uh, .com. Check them out. Accessibility. They're creating Braille dice, and they're creating also a ton of accessibility components for tabletop RPGs. Look them up. They're fantastic. We've been working fantastically together. I printed these flyers out, and on the back you'll see the Darts RPG information as well. So thank you for being here. So that's it on the Kickstarter. I'm doing well so far. We're over 4,000. We're at about 55% of the way there. We got 13 days to go. So I mean, definitely, if you know anybody that you can share it with, if you're able to back or fund the Kickstarter, I'd love to have you guys do that. But no matter what, just know there's going to be a power outage. It's just a matter of whether or not it's going to be immediate or something that you'll be able to get this winter, or something that's going to be, a little bit further down the line. One thing I wanted to point out, let's talk about some of the rewards a little bit. Let's see here. Let's scroll down to the rewards. So there's your standard $10 pledge. After that, that'll get you a digital copy. From there, we have a $20 print on demand option. All of these are going to be done through DriveThruRPG. Just getting that disclaimer out there. DriveThruRPG is where I'm going to be doing a lot of my distribution from and making the book available through. If you pledge at the $20 level, I'll give you a print-on-demand access code, which allows you to basically print the book at the cost. Now, I ran the book as it stands through an estimator, and the book, let's see if I can pull this up here. My face again, and I'll bring it over here. I ran the book as it stands through an estimator, and it came up to about $12 and change. So through DriveThruRPG at the $20 level, you'd be able to print the book or get a code to print the book at cost, and then you'd pay for shipping and handling. So if you're looking at the cost, you're spending basically 20 plus 12 and change, so around 32 plus shipping and handling for a book that will eventually sell MSRP at about $45. Moving down the line, I jumped up to a pretty high amount, to $100. But the $100, it just goes, I want to make sure that I have enough to not only support, to primarily fund the design and art, but I also want to be able to make sure that I could accommodate any kind of shipping. And since this is my first Kickstarter, I want to make sure that I can cover the costs of shipping for each order. So what I'm willing to do at the $100 level is not only will you get a digital copy, you'll also get a physical copy sent to you, but you'll also get early access to all future digital copies of supplements. So anytime I release an adventure, anytime I release a supplemental component, you'll get a digital copy of that. Oh, new question. If I pledge some money now, let's show. Can I pledge more to add up to the next tier reward? Great question. And yes, you can. I've actually already seen people, as I'm describing the pledge system, as I'm describing the book more, and as they're getting into it and finding out more information about Power Outage, they are escalating their pledge amounts to greater levels. So I've seen a lot of people move from the $10 pledge to the $20 pledge, and I've seen a few people move from the $20 pledge to the $100 tier, which was fantastic. So yeah, absolutely, you could do that. Uh, this is a new addition. I didn't have this before. I actually built this in yesterday. At the $250 pledge, uh, what you get is the small group pack. It is a copy of 4 physical copies of Power Outage. This is great for if you are an educator of a small group, a counselor of a small group of children, or a small group environment, or even if you are, you're running a family environment and you have 4 kids that you're working with. It also works if you are in a homeschooling environment. If you want to if you're homeschooling and you're using Power Outage as a supplement to education, the 4-pack allows you to get 4 copies of the book, so everybody gets a copy. Or you can give away 3 copies to whoever you want. Included in that is a 1 to 2 hour video session, and you can see that I could talk for a while. And I call it 1 to 2 hours, but as you can tell, I could probably talk for a while longer. But I'm guaranteeing at least a 1 to 2 hour live video discussion with whoever backs at that level, and I'm willing to basically provide guidance and education on how to GM Power Outage for your group of kids, and that can be as specific as as your specific group, or it can be just in general. Now, of course, if you are a seasoned GM, then that just might be us chatting away and coming up with ideas or brainstorming or spitballing, whatever the case may be. Again, I'm happy to talk, so it's there. Are you going to run previews of the new content on Twitch with your super cool gaming buddies? I am currently running previews of new content on Twitch. You guys are playing through it right now. Yeah, it's fun stuff. Version 1.3 is already out there. Version 1.4 is actually the version that you guys are playing on Sundays. So you can check out I'm pointing at things, but I don't have any links up here. So, but check out my Twitch channel and you'll get to see that. Let's see here. I'll try not to kill the world. You potentially almost bankrupt the world, which was okay, I guess. Oh, thank you for linking that. Okay, so yeah, there in the chat is a link to the Twitch channel, and you can see all the prior episodes and watch gameplay in action. What is your suggestion for teachers to use this in their classrooms? Fantastic question. Yeah, we did almost have a Fight Club situation going on there. I'm big on gamification. It depends on the classroom, the environment, and the situation. So Power Outage doesn't necessarily work for every environment, but it can work for a lot of environments. What it could, from a gamified standpoint, if you're gamifying your classroom, you can do quite a few things. One, you can help your kids create characters within the game, and those characters are those character names and attributes represent the student. When you are assigning assignments to kids, rather than giving them, again, it's a lot of this goes around the idea of dialogue and communication. Rather than giving kids tests, quizzes, homework assignments, you're giving them quests, you're giving them adventures, you're giving them. So you're changing the terminology and you're restructuring the class environment. Um, if you switch, I mean, I'm getting into gamification here, and I apologize for that because it might not necessarily be Power Outage itself. But I mean, just from a gamification standpoint, if you switch to a point-based system of grading rather than a percentage-based system of grading, basically what you could be doing is it's just changing the terminology and changing the perception of the environment. So rather than getting a quiz where you are getting 100 that can go down based off of how many times the kid failed, you could be giving them a quest, and they are earning experience, and that certain experience eventually translates to a grade. I mean, that is, in a very small version, the essence of gamification in a nutshell. But you can actually use the adventures within a gamified classroom in small group settings to provide this kind of level of education too. And the interesting thing about Power Outage, and something that the players, my Sunday players, have experienced, is that all of the villains have built-in meta weaknesses. Correct. So villains have weaknesses that tie in to meta characteristics or meta actions that the kids do. So for instance, reverse engineers. If you learn to do something new, if a child has learned to do something new, if you do, take a -2 to all attacks against you from reverse engineers. Swarm bots. If their allowance was saved since the last session, +2 to attack rolls against swarm bots. These are meta actions that kids can do outside of the game that impact their characters in the game. Now, these are generalized for just a standard gameplay parent student, but in a classroom setting, you can use positively reinforcing actions within a classroom to impact their gameplay. So that when you guys do sit down for small group play sessions within a classroom, and again, that works well with differentiated classrooms where you can do rotations of gameplay within a classroom. Now not only does Power Outage or a gameplay session of Power Outage become a reward system, but rewards for actions outside of the game, inside of the classroom, become rewards within the game. Additionally, within a classroom, you can now substitute puzzles that you would typically create generalized puzzles for a game. You can substitute assignments into the gameplay. So gameplay might, I mean, again, within a classroom setting, you're saying, this isn't as, it might not be as fun if you were in a more relaxed or a more like home-based environment where your puzzle is, like a little bit more Indiana Jones-esque. But I've created logic tables. I've created pattern recognition. I've created, I've heard of people using trivia as a form of puzzle within the game. These are all assignments that can be built into any kind of curriculum or lesson plan and utilized within the game as a puzzle component to any adventure. So, just if I hope that answers your question, Maria. If it doesn't, let me know. Great. By all means, feel free to follow up, and I'll be happy to answer more. Um, Moving back, so I have the small group session. Also great for comic book shops, by the way. Um, if you want to encourage kids to come to your comic book shop or your game shop, um, and you want an alternative to your standard Pokemon trading card game, your Magic the Gathering card game, or your Bakugan, whatever your trading card games. I know those are your money makers. I get that completely. But if you want to introduce a new generation to tabletop RPGs, uh, Power Outage is a fantastic way of doing so. So, contributing at the $250 level will get you books. It'll get you listed as a backer. Or if you're using your store name, it'll get your store name listed as a backer. Um, and yeah, I mean, you get 4 physical copies, 1 digital copy, um, and again, 1 to 2 hours worth of guidance, directly helping encourage how to play the game with that group of kids. And one thing I want to stop for a second and jump back to is a little bit about gaming with kids in the book. So I have within Power Outage a whole section on gaming with kids. And the section covers a large amount of information. And this is based off of my gameplay with kids. It's based off of research. It's based off of gameplay with adults. It's based off of just, everything that I've learned in the past 18 years that I've spent in the educational system. And it's based off of, my experiences for the past 10 years as a father. So Power Outage has guidance for how to play with kids. It shows you how to play with kids at different ranges and different ranges in abilities. So it shows you how to play with a kid that is age 4 to 6, accommodations you might provide, conditions that might occur from 7 to 9, from 10 plus. It also gives some guidance on, as I discussed earlier, the differentiation. I kind of basically covered differentiation in this dialogue here, but differentiation, how you can play with kids of different varying ages and abilities all within one game session. It has accessibility accommodations, and that is a huge component of Power Outage. So I realized pretty early on that it is an imperative that anybody that is running a game, anybody that is developing a game, anybody that is creating a space where gaming occurs should have consideration for ensuring that people with disabilities have equal access to the gaming table. And I saw a lot of this when I was going to a series of conventions called DexCon. That's one of the conventions. It's run by Dexposure, but they have 3 series of conventions through the year, and they do a great job of accommodating people of differing abilities, and also, just how inclusive they are is fantastic. And it's not just from that. I mean, I could relate back to, like personal connections that I have with people that have disabilities. But the bottom line is, if the things that we find joy from in gaming is as important to us as it is, if it provides us the level of escape, the level of freedom, the level of connectivity that we can have with friends, it is almost a requirement of us to ensure that people with disabilities have the ability to gain that feeling as well. With that, I did a lot of research into accessibility and creating accessibility within a gaming environment, primarily for kids. And it became a much larger process that I realized I could possibly handle on my own. I don't have the disabilities that I'm creating accessibility for. And I know that from my perception, from my visibility, I'll never be able to truly understand what a person with a disability is going through, while at the same time trying to provide guidance for them. So any effort that I make, I understand, is going to be a just a bare foundation, or touching your toes in the water. So with that understanding, and with, I guess, coming to that realization, I did two things. One is I provided what guidance I can within the book. That guidance is still being checked through by professionals. I'm working with two directors of special education that I work with or have worked with in my career, and they are overviewing. They're going over the guidance that I've provided in Power Outage, and so far they haven't spotted any real red flags. So I'm thrilled about that. But they're also looking at things like terminology and making sure that the guidance I'm providing is not only acceptable but actually functional. And so I've provided guidance within the book. And I've also created a website called accessible-rpg.com. And only recently I created some social media accounts to attach to it. And it is a wiki. So it is openly accessible. And as soon as I'm done with this Kickstarter, I will be shifting gears back to accessible-rpg.com to encourage people to contribute information, and also to start coordinating with some of the people that have already started this research work, people like Meeples Like Us, people like RPG Research, and work with them to create guidance to make sure that gaming tables are accessible. Now, from the standpoint of Power Outage, within Power Outage, what I've done, aside from linking to that site, is I've taken, again, somewhat in the same way that I took on powers, I've taken on disabilities, in that I've taken on not the cause of the disability, but the actual effect of the disability. And I've broken them up into 5 categories or domains: physical, communicative, receptive, behavioral, cognitive, and emotional. And I found that providing support and accessibility guidance on these effects gives the greatest spectrum of coverage and support for people that have these accessibility concerns. So if you are suffering from anxiety, whether that anxiety is being generated from ADHD or a physical or a psychological abuse, or from a physical disability, that anxiety itself is separated from its cause and provided for to the greatest extent that I can. Within the book, there is a guidance on a pre-session communication, which is a discussion about questions that you can have with a care provider or parent of a child prior to gaming. Those questions provide you with the baseline and provide you with coverage of considerations that you should make when gaming. And then from there, I've broken down each of these domains and provided guidance, either general guidance or guidance for physical conditions, communicative, behavioral, cognitive, and emotional. So that's all in there. If you have any questions on that, feel free to ask. Again, I'm not like um, focusing too much on these specific lines of guidance, simply because this is still a work that is in review, but it will be reviewed and finalized prior to the release of the book. I want to make sure that, like, I've already in my efforts um, taken missteps that I've wanted to make sure that are, that were corrected. Like I've discovered that terminology when it comes to special education in New Jersey doesn't necessarily match internationally accepted terminology for people with disabilities, and I just want to ensure that I'm being as accommodating as possible and as thoughtful as possible to the needs of the disabled community. Okay, so moving on through rewards, at the $500 level, it's long enough to become a villain. I created a couple new features to this. So not only do you get digital copies, listing as a backer, and everything like that, but you also get a unique villain that is created for you, uh, illustrated by Abhishek Gamir, my artist, um, who has done the villain art for the rest of the book. So you will be getting an actual uh, like canonical drawn rendered villain, and I will work on creating with you to create all the powers that the villain has and weaknesses that they may have. Um, and I will also create those villain characteristics at whatever levels that you want for the kids that are playing them. So whether it be a level 1 to 4 villain or a 5 to 8 villain, et cetera, down the line. The max levels, by the way, are 20. But the new thing is that I got Melanie Tingdahl to agree to creating 2 character art pieces for your game. So let me pull up Melanie's work here. I mean, just to give you an idea of the quality of her, and I know that she hates hearing that her work is adorable, but you know, it's it's pretty adorable. Let's be honest, it's great. Uh, so she is uh, definitely she has agreed to do 2 pieces of character art. So you might be able to get not only a villain drawn for your adventure, but character art drawn for each of your players. If you have a max of 2 players, that is, which happens often for family environments. But yeah, Melanie Tingdahl, people. That's fantastic. Uh, that is at the $500 level. Oops, you didn't see that. Uh, where is my? Where's my? Not you. Where's my face? There's my face. Hey. Okay. Uh, what else is there? I probably should. Oh, I'm losing people, but that's okay. So I should probably run through these real quick. $600 or more is like the small pack, only it's a larger pack. It's doubled. You get 8 books, and you get 3 to 4 hours of of training. Split however you want. So if you have 4 teachers, then I could be teaching 4 different teachers at 1 hour intervals. Of course, all those live video training sessions would have to be after hours because I run a full-time job. Sorry. And then finally, Ultimate Adventure. The $1,000 level, I will develop a full-fledged adventure for you. I'll work with you on your heroes. Based off of the heroes that you have playing, I will build an adventure, build a unique villain, have that villain rendered for your game, and I'll also try to talk Melanie into getting some character art for that too. But yeah, at the $1,000 level, soup to nuts, I'll do everything I can to work with you on building an adventure directly for your kids, specifically from the creator of Power Outage. So that is hopefully unique enough to warrant that amount of investment. So if you have any, high-paying people that want to do that, by all means, I'd appreciate it. And yeah, I've probably worn out my welcome here. I'll take any. I can run through some of the aspects of the lore real quick, probably in the next 10 minutes, and then I will take any last questions, and then we'll call it a night. Power outage. Power outage exists on an alternate Earth environment called Outage, Alaska. It is a continent-sized island that appeared in the North Pacific, some in the early 19th century, 18th century. I've got to remember. Sorry, I'm bad at that. At remembering my own facts. There we are. So power outage showed up mysteriously. Was originally colonized by Japanese and Russian interests, which led to some hostilities over time, at which point eventually a large part of it was sold to America by Russia at the same time Alaska was purchased. So it is actually a part of Alaska because as big as Alaska is, they figured why not add an extra continent-sized island to it and just call it all Alaska. So this is Outage, Alaska. The great thing about Outage is it is a big sandbox. It allows you to play the kind of game that you want to play. It is broken up into 5 different regions. Shorai City is a neo-futuristic Tokyo-inspired metropolis. So we're talking about flying cars, we're talking about robots, both large and small, we're talking about large monsters, kaiju, and we're talking about just soaring towers into the sky. It's great for big beat 'em up brawls. The major villains from that are Mrs. Roboto and the Tempuritan. Major heroes, I want to say, are Pebcak and Pocket Protector. So those are the 2 heroes there. Each region has information about the region, the history, the villains, the heroes, and then information on how to get around. Getting around, unique characteristics that could be included in your game session. There are session hooks, and there is even a roll table. So if you wanted to, you could roll a dice and then use that to add a detriment or an asset to your gameplay if you are creating games within that environment. The Autumnia Zavad is always night, no Nobody knows why. It's always dark. It is a Russian Gothic atomic punk uh, Victorian-esque kind of cityscape. It is fantastic to play noir type detective games. We're going to actually be going into the Autonomy of Odd as our adventures continue in the Power Outage weekly session. Spoilers. Uh, the major villains in that are the Bolshevist and Breakfast. The major heroes are Suburbanite and Stunt Double. So lots of puns. I'm a dad. Seward's Refuge is a central region to the island. It has it creates a border wall that blocks the rest of the overgrowth, which I'll get into in a bit. Um, I used the term border wall, but by all means, this book and the storyline were developed, early 2014. We're talking about trees here, but it is a great environment to explore, the mini concepts of politics, or the idea of science gone wrong, basically. Uh, and it is it's major. It is a large military and scientific facility run by the Americans, and it is a centralized government, so it functions very well also as a pass-through or hub environment for adventures that span multiple regions. Uh, Major villains are General Specific, whose picture is forgotten there, and Agent Orangutan. Major heroes are Dwingaloo and I believe Shieldster. Shieldster actually is a hero on the autistic spectrum. We then what do we got? We got the Sink. The Sink is it is a peninsula of the island that is constantly sinking into the water on one end and constantly emerging from the ground on the other. It's a little bit mysterious, especially since there are hidden structures of ancient civilizations that are appearing from this newly grown land. It is also a hive of villainy, because there is a large floating shanty town that is built on the water off the coast of the peninsula, and it is a haven for pirates and the like. The major villains, it's a great environment for exploration or pirate adventures, water adventures, or just, again, more experimentation, mystery of like what's going on with the environment. Major villains are Instigator and Boat Rocker. And then major heroes are Punchable and Law Yar. Yeah, fun stuff. Then the final region is the Overgrowth. The Overgrowth is a sentient forest that is trying to take over the world. It is currently being restrained by Seward's Refuge. It is the largest place of the island. It covers about 3/4 of the island, actually. And again, we're talking about a continent-sized island, so it is a lot of space to explore, and it allows for players to play the largest amount of unique environments, whether they be fantasy environments, castles, or it could be dinosaurs, could be your dragons, it could be it actually has a wizarding school for sandwich wizards, so it could be kind of your own little Hogwarts environment-esque environment. Sorry, JK. or it has a island for. It has a section of powers. Powers are the name for the superheroes in the world. They're kind of like outcast powers called Genoa. Major villains are Tree Stash and Swagnito, and major heroes are Rock and Troll and Sandwich. And that's about it. I mean, there's a bunch of unexplored environments too that I describe. The book has 120 villains. Uh, Most of them henchmen. 10 of them are or 10 supervillains with two levels of each villain, and each villain has 10 henchmen listed in the book. There's Breakfast. And the book also includes a full adventure that we just played through on Twitch. So if you don't want spoilers, don't necessarily watch my Twitch channel. But if you do want spoilers, or if you want to get an idea of how the game plays, check it out. The full Mrs. Roboto adventure is included at the end of the book. I spoke for way too long. Okay. I will give 5 minutes for any more questions that can come up. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to answer them. If not, then I'll give you guys feel free to file out. Yeah, any questions, guys? I think I've covered a lot, but I'm more than happy to answer anything else that's out there. And I'm not seeing any questions come in. I've probably put a couple of you to sleep. That's okay. But yeah, there you go. I'll give it, I'd say 2 minutes. If there's no questions, then we'll call it a day. So I'll go while we're waiting for questions. I'll just show some of the book here. Well, thank you, Larry, for joining me. Yeah, I mean, this is the end cap, cap to the session. So if you guys have to leave, you're more than welcome to. Thank you for joining me. Let's see here. So the book art, I'll give you an idea of some of the art from Abhishek. Cover is looking fantastic. This was our original Power Outage logo. It is now changed to the brand new, hotness. I'm allowed to say that because I'm a dad. So brand new logo coming out, and the designer, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier. Our designer is Rosanna, I don't want to mess up her name, Spookus. We've only chatted digitally. Oh, hello. Let's see if this doesn't expand. I want you to see how fantastic her design is. So let me pull up. Let's see if I can pull up a local copy of the amazing redesign of the character sheet that she did for us, because it is fantastic. I think it's under episodes. Let me pull this up large. So let's see here if that comes up. There we go. So right off the bat, it's fantastic. I mean, from an aesthetic standpoint, it's great. But even from, as much as I've worked on Power Outage, what's fantastic in talking to a designer is she mentioned to me like that she wanted the way the rationale for her design came from the idea of building a character as being a part of a blueprint, and like I never even considered that, and just like the awesome elements that come through from having a professional designer work on something is just phenomenal. Like you could see immediately the difference in quality. Um, Same content, uh, just such a better outlay of design. Um, One thing that you'll see that occurred over time is that through just learning and playing with kids is in normally character sheets, the character art area is small and in the corner. With when you're playing with kids, the drawing is actually front and center. So just like from playing with kids, I learned to make the drawing section bigger. And if you have the ability to print sheets, regularly, one great thing to do is to hand the kids a new sheet each time so they are drawing the scenes of their adventure as they're playing. Um, and that way they're like they're always engaged throughout the entire game session. They're always engaged. The other great thing about the design is the color coding here. So if I am a GM and I'm playing with kids, and I'm trying to get them to tell me a attribute score, I could tell them to tell me the red score or the yellow score or the blue score, without necessarily them being able to read impact power or Omer. Um, some of the design elements on the character sheets. Let's see here. Let me jump through to my drive here. Drive. There we go. Now you get to see a glimpse of my disorganized mess of a file structure. It actually all makes sense. It just takes me a while to remember it all. Let's see here. I am looking to show you character sheets. So I'm looking at heroes, and I'm looking at pre-generated characters to give you an idea of the characters. Now these are designed for 1.3, mind you. So they're using older character sheets and older naming conventions. So it still says armor there instead of Omer there. But just to give you an idea of this, so when you're the character sheets will have a card page that allows you to create cards for powers. That'll be as a separate supplement from the book. It'll be a digital supplement that you can attach the name of the power, the symbol for the power, a description of the power, and a reference back to the utility. So what I typically do is I have either a printout of this sheet or I cut these up into individualized cards. And the kid's able to pick the power they want by selecting the card, not necessarily saying what they want to do each time, although they do that too. And it creates a great little guidance for them to kind of accelerate the functionality of play. And again, Power Outage doesn't have classes, it doesn't have races, but you'll note that based off of the color, almost the color combinations that you see in the characters, that there's often a balance of utility, attack, and support. But as you're creating the characters, you may find that the character that the kid created is more likely has more combat, you know, and utility versus having more supportive powers. So it almost holistically creates the characters.